Hey, Dave. How are
Hey,
you?
how are you?
Great to meet you. Great to meet
Yeah,
you.
nice to meet you.
Okay, Stephen Cummins here. I'm pretty sure it's the first time I've interviewed you, though you've spoken on stages I've spoken on before. I've seen you on different rosters, in whether it's Web Summit or whether it was SaaS Talk or whether it was, I don't know where it was. So just before we get into the conversation, Dave, just to briefly introduce you, I suppose third hand to the audience while you get set up there. Dave's originally from Boston, Massachusetts, or at least he's there now. I suppose, a B2B brand builder is a pretty good description on your LinkedIn. And he's the CMO of Privy, which is #1 sales app on Shopify. He's also a very skilled podcaster. I've been listening to his podcast recently. It's excellent on B2B marketing leaders. And he kind of cut his podcasting teeth, way back in a 10-month stint with HubSpot, where he would have become skilled at both producing and promoting podcasts. But those conversations are only adding layers of knowledge to the knowledge he already has in terms of setting up a marketing structure, marketing team that can power your way to 10 million ARR, which is what we're all about here. So, Dave, welcome to the session.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Okay. Very briefly, before I'm actually going to ask you, how you define marketing and how you would, and your experiences with Privy and with Drift. But just before I get to that, Dave, just to set the scene, could you take 2 or 3 minutes to take us through, your earlier experience as a product manager and as an account management lead? One of those companies was Privy, which you went back to, and your brief marketing stint in HubSpot as a marketing manager. Just give us a steer of those experiences and how they influenced. Take us up to the young marketer that entered Drift in 2015.
Yeah, I didn't really have a clear path, and so I just kind of hopped around and just did a bunch of different things. I wanted to work in tech. I wanted to work in startups, and so I worked in PR, and then I went from PR to product marketing, and then I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a marketer, and so I left a bigger company and went to a startup where there was no marketing jobs, but I knew the founder, and he said, "Hey, if you want to work at this company, you can have a job. However, the only job that we have is customer success." And I was like, "Sure, I don't know what that is. I can talk to people, I can talk to customers, I kind of can figure this stuff out. I'll do that." And I think that was really influential in just like building up this knowledge about a bunch of different things. I really was a generalist who could write. I think writing and copywriting and speaking and presenting was kind of always my strength. I just didn't know that could be channeled into marketing. And so I had to sell, I had to market, I had to write press releases. Like I basically got my MBA, got my master's degree in marketing through hopping around at all these little companies. But it wasn't really until I went to Drift that things changed for me, because that was the first time where I was the first marketing person. There was an established company. It was an early company that was not established. So I had to then apply all those things and say, "Hey, this is now on you. You got to figure out how to launch this website. You got to figure out how to create content. You got to figure out how to get traffic. You got to figure out how to get leads." And that, at least for the way that I learn by doing. And so that was like, okay, you've learned a bunch of things over the last couple of years, but now you have to actually go and do that. The most valuable experience of my career to date.
And just before we get into your experience in Drift, I believe you were there. You were there for was it 4 years, 2 months, something like that? What was, and you kind of worked your way up from marketing manager to VP of marketing. What was their AOR? Can you remember roughly when you joined? I mean, they were only a couple of years old. And what was it when you left? Can you remember the order of magnitude change over those 4 years?
Of course. Who would forget? Who would not know that? So when I joined, there was probably 10 to 12 people on the team. I was the only marketing person on the team. There was like an intern, but I was the first like full-time marketing person. Yeah. No expectation of running the team, no expectation of building the team. I grew by doing the marketing. And so I started doing a bunch of the things, started creating content, started our blog, started our email, started to just own the marketing strategy, just took ownership of it. And because of that, I just continued to grow as fast as the company did. And so, oh, hey, Dave, you get to hire your first person. Let's see if you can do this. Okay. Made first hire, made the second hire, made the third hire, all the way up, and just continued to grow until the end. When I left, the company was 350 people.
Wow.
And the marketing team had grown. The marketing team had grown from 0 to 30 people. And so it was really, it was an amazing experience to learn both starting something and getting it to that scale. And then I hopped off at the end because I think the stuff that I really love is the early stage stuff. I think like the title of this session is like 10 million. And I think that's really a good sweet spot for me because I love marketing. If anybody who knows me and knows the stuff that I put out in the world, like I love marketing, also. And so like, I like to do that. And so what was fun about going to Privy is the marketing team is 6-7 people. And so I get to be, waist deep in just about everything and still get to do enough of the doing that kind of scratches that itch.
So, so basically a marketing team of 1 to 30 over 4 years in Drift and a hell of a ride in terms of growth. Talk to us a little bit about what worked, what it was that worked for the marketing team there and how you were able to drive that level of growth during your time in Drift.
The number one thing that worked was we just didn't do things like everybody else did them. There isn't one, there's not like one particular channel. It's not like we got email right. We did things like nobody else did them. And what that meant was when we got into the space, there's literally 5,000 other sales and marketing tech companies. And so, even if we did make the best product in the world, there's no way people would believe us because if, there's 7,000, 5,000 other products in there. And so from the beginning, the founders pushed us in marketing to really focus on building a brand and to stand out by doing things differently and creating a real story and connection with our potential customers. And so the number one thing that kicked things off for us was we took a clear stance about who we were for and who we were against. And so we came out and we said, hey, marketers, I know you hate lead forms. I know people hate lead forms. And we made lead forms the perceived enemy, right? And that's obviously it's a fake thing. That is marketing in a nutshell, which is amazing. But what happened that was so powerful was when we started creating content about like, this is, hey, here, the old way of doing marketing is broken. There's a new way that we got to do it that puts people first and treats people like people and blah, 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 blah. All of these people that we didn't even know started to come and say, hey, I want to follow your content. I'm on your email list. I love your blog. I love your content. Okay. We didn't even have anything to sell them yet, but we started to build an audience before we were ready to sell through content. And so people were like, wow, I love these people's take on the world. I totally agree. And so then 6 months later, when we actually launched our product, we weren't going out to the world saying, hey, we're a brand you've never heard of, buy our product. We were saying, hey, you know us, you know us, you like us, you trust us, you've been on our email list, you've been listening to our podcast, you've been reading our blog for 6 months now. You know how we think about the world and you know how we think about marketing. Do you want to try our brand new our product? And like that part of the company was like the thing that cemented that was the foundation for everything that we did after that. And so it wasn't one marketing channel, it was more this very clear company story and I guess as Andy Raskin calls it, this strategic narrative that we created as a company.
It's very interesting to hear that, and it brings back memories of my early days in Salesforce in 2003 when we were doing lots of web to lead forms. Basically a lot of outreach, a lot of high touch stuff. I'm interested to hear how your background in customer success and your background in content really influenced you as a marketer. Sarah Varney was on your excellent podcast, and she said that the goal of marketing is to make markets. Would you say that in Drift, when you were producing all that content, when you were describing things around the problem you were about to address and creating that expectation, creating that awareness, do you believe you were making a market when you were doing that?
Did she say that? That's a good quote. I don't know.
In your podcast.
You know how sometimes when you do a podcast, like you're not always paying attention or during the interview. The point of marketing is to make markets. I like that. What I really like about that is I just think that the best marketing teams and the best marketers. Let me put it a different way. I think it's easy to capture demand. Like, if you are marketing at Zoom right now, your job is not hard. I'm sorry. And so I think that, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's amazing. That is a dream. Like, I'm sure everyone's getting paid well. Everybody's hitting their numbers. Everybody's getting bonus. It's fine. But I think that like what separates the good marketers from the great ones is that the great ones can go and create demand. Yeah. And so like the way that I interpret that quote from Sarah is great marketing creates demand for this thing, right? And so it's one thing to be like, yes, I know I'm going to buy a Peloton, whatever. It's another thing to, have created that demand 2 or 3 years ago, not during a pandemic. And so for me, that means like the combination of creativity and demand gen, I think is like the most powerful combination in marketing. And so I think that's why we focus on creating a category at Drift, because we're like, there is no way to define this thing that we're doing. Yeah. We need to go and create a category, which is like, go all the way back and read the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries and Jack Trout. And like, rule number one is like, rule number one is to be first in the category, right? To be the best. Rule number two is like, if you can't be first in that category, create another category that you can be first in. And so I think we definitely ran that play. But also, I love this line from Christopher Lockhead. He said, if you can't be first, be different. And so we said, we're different. We are a new way of doing marketing. This is conversational marketing. If you believe that you want to do marketing this way, come with us. And we created a movement that was bigger than like a B2B software company.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in fairness, there are great marketers who are great at executing on those areas where there's a clear lead in the market. You had Gong.io, a company I'm very familiar with because I interviewed one of the founders, but you had Udi Lerniger there, and his definition of marketing was to make sales easier, right? So there are people who can run faster than others in that area, but there's no doubt that creativity is harder to find. Would you agree that in the B2C space, there's always been, or for a very long time, there's been tremendous marketeers in terms of creative, because it's so hard to differentiate sometimes. Let's say in the fast-moving consumer goods space. But if I go back in time to when I was in SaaS in the early days, I still am, of course, I would have seen marketeers as kind of execution meisters. Maybe one of the reasons Salesforce did so well was their CEO was a brilliant marketer, Mark Benioff, and that's why they produced so many great marketeers. How do you think there's been a massive step change in the last 7 to 8 years in what's expected of a CMO and how a CMO builds a marketing organization? And talk to us a little bit about, segue from that into actually how you went about building that team in Drift before we get on to your latest.
Yeah, I think it's great. I can't leave Udi's comment alone, though, because I want you to know that I agree with Udi's comment. That I think the way that I interpret that is marketing makes sales easier, not marketing makes the sales team's job easier. I think that's one piece of it. I think like I read that as marketing, like capital S, marketing makes selling overall. And that means like Absolutely. People learning about you buying. So I love that. I love that one.
Me too.
So you mentioned like the creativity. I think what's interesting about what you mentioned, especially in the Salesforce example, is I think you have to understand the role of the CMO or whoever the marketing leader is, whatever. Because I was running marketing as director of marketing and even senior manager of marketing. It's like, it depends on the stage of the company. But I think you have to match the CEO. Like somebody has to be the visionary, I think, from a marketing standpoint. Like the point of the job, if your marketing person is not your best spokesperson or best public speaker or best person that's going to get everybody fired up at your company, then it damn sure better be the CEO. Yeah. Because if it's not the CEO and your marketing person, like the marketing leader needs to be the person who can stand up in front of the company, get everybody fired up in the company, but also go deliver a keynote in front of 1,000 of your customers and have everybody be like, that's the person we want speaking to our potential customers. And so I do think that, look, I love demand gen, I love product, all that stuff is so important, but I think that the creativity and the visionary and the inspirational part of any type of marketing is so important. Unless you just have a brand that just prints money and then you can just be an optimizer. Or in the case of a visionary CEO like a Benioff, then it's like a yin and yang thing where you need to match the marketing team with that type of personality. And so I think there's a bunch of great CEOs who do this. But I think the best thing you can do in marketing is to be that spokesperson, and in line with that, understand the strengths of the CEO. I think the CEO, ideally, the CEO is the best speaker at the company, right? Because like at the end of the day, nobody wants to hear the CMO. People who don't know marketing are like, oh, the CMO is just going to talk about some product stuff. You want Steve Jobs, you want Mark Benioff, but
now we are going to get to Privy, but let's have a look at the structure of the marketing organization that you built for Drift. And what I'd love you to focus in on is, what did that look like by the time you got to 1.5, 2, 3 ARR? Because the the audience here, they need to get there before they can get to 10. Who were your first hires, and how do they interact? What did that look like?
Yeah, so we grew really fast in the first 1 or 2 years, and I think a lot of that was product of the story and the fit. However, I think the first marketing person was me, and I'm not saying that from an ego perspective. I'm saying that because it's an important lesson, which is in the early stages of a company, when you're building out the marketing team, everything is a game of matching, and so you have to say, okay, if we have Dave, what are Dave's strengths? He's a good writer. He's a good content creator. He can do, the website, product marketing, content. Okay, but we need a full-time, but he's not like an in-depth writer. Okay, so maybe we need that. Maybe we need a demand gen person. You have to strength. It's not, I hate answering team structure questions because I could tell you whatever, but it doesn't match. It needs to match the stage of your company, the people at your company. It also has to match the founder. I think too many founders let themselves off the hook for marketing, where they're like, we're trying to hire Dave. I'm trying to hire a marketing leader. And I'm like, okay, great. Which one of the two founders is going to also be responsible for marketing? And they're like, I don't know. Because like what was amazing about what they had right at Drift was the two founders basically split up the different job functions because everyone is different, right? And so like the CTO, he took product engineering and kind of the sales piece of it. And David, who's a CEO, and we worked really closely together on the marketing thing. And so I had his buy-in on marketing from day one. I think a lot of early stage marketing teams don't make it because they don't know. The CEO there is no executive person there. And so like, if you're going to bring someone on more junior like myself at the time, you better match them with a founder who's gonna like really be invested in marketing and want to see it through from a business perspective. Because me at 26 years old, there's no way I'm going to have the influence and capabilities to be able to do that. So number one is like team fit. For us at Drift, I was creating content on my own and quickly saw that content was working, in that we grew blog traffic pretty fast. We launched a podcast that became popular pretty quickly. And so the first thought was like, how can we double down on that? And I was like, I'm not a writer and I don't have time to, like, not a long form writer and I don't have time to write. So we hired an amazing writer and he just cranked on the blog for basically like a year. After that, we hired a video person, and then we kind of brought in a more demand gen product marketing person. And really the first 4 or 5 people were all kind of multidisciplinary. God, that's a word I would never say. They're kind of athletes in that they can do a little bit of everything. With my role kind of being like player coach, right? I am managing the team, but I'm also writing the headlines and I'm coming up with the strategy with the CEO. That was the right mix for us at the time.
And that seems to be a recurring theme with top CMOs like yourself. One of your guests, and they're all top CMOs. I think she talked about, she spotted she matched up her best digital specialist, SEO, whatever, with her best demand gen person, if you remember that, and put them together. strategically.
I know you're going there anyway, but like on the Privy thing, like the first person that I hired, because my background and my bias is not demand gen and ops. I'm the creative product marketing, content. And so the very first person that I hired going into Privy was someone who is way better and way smarter than me on the demand gen and ops side. And so I think like that's the most important lesson, which is like, who are you? What are you have to identify what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? But also like, what things do you naturally gravitate towards and you want to do versus don't want to do? Because if there's things that you don't want to do and you need to do them for the company, that's going to be a mismatch. I think that's really such an important thing in the early stages.
So would you say a great CMO or a great first marketing hire is almost like a founder within the startup, almost has to think like the CEO, but within the context of the startup, and think about where the limitations lie, what resources are needed and how they'll match up optimally?
Yeah, I wouldn't say think like the CEO. I think the CEO has a lot more to think about. I think maybe like if you think of it as the CEO of marketing, because if it's just you, no one is going to tell you, hey, we should think about doing an event. We should think about, or you might get, hey, the CEO might say, hey, we should think about doing an event. And you got to turn around and be like, who's going to teach me how to do that? Like, you have to figure it out. And so you have to be a mini CEO in the sense of like, what's the budget? There is no budget. You got to make it up, right? Who are you going to work with? You got to figure those things out. So you have to be a creative problem solver. And like a CEO, you have to be always thinking about two things at once, which people struggle with, which is you have to be thinking about the present. How do I hit the number today? How do I build the right foundation today? While thinking about what's next. And so it might not be the time to do this now, but in 6 months, we want to launch a YouTube channel and really make that a important piece of our strategy. How do you hit the number today and then also, build the foundation to do that? I think you got to be able to do both of those things.
Now you had a more junior role with Privy in their very early days, and you've come back to them as a CMO. First question is really what drew you back, and the second question is, in this last year, what have you brought to the table, and what sort of how have you changed their marketing structure?
I'll have to think about what I've brought to the table.
It's not a challenge. It's just
no, I'm just kidding. I don't do much. I just the CMO, like, that's what people don't understand about the CMO job. I'm kidding. So I think what the reason that I went back was I had a great relationship with Ben, who's a CEO, and we always had kind of talked about, like, because I was only there for a year, the company ran out of money, it just wasn't the right timing for me to stay there, and we just stayed in touch, and he had been trying to, like, every now and then say, hey, what if you can't, what if you did marketing here? What if you're a CMO here? And he'd always be sharing me, like, look at how fast we're growing. Here's the opportunity. Look at these people that want to work with us. And I was like, wow, this does look pretty exciting. It's just not the right timing. And then, it became the right time for me, like I said earlier, at the end of Drift. And what was super exciting was, okay, number one was, I have another CEO that I know understands marketing and I want to work with. And so, like, David at Drift and Ben at Privy both understand marketing. And that is like 90% of the job in being successful as a marketing leader is, like, can you get on the same page with the CEO about what marketing should look like, right? So that was a huge check the box. It was like, no matter what I do in life, I have to agree with the CEO in marketing for sure. Yeah. And then the second part was e-commerce. Like, e-commerce was such an exciting space. I've been super interested in the e-commerce kind of world and Shopify, and thought we could build a really cool brand in there. And then kind of this year it accelerated because of COVID, and I didn't predict that, obviously, but even back in September a year ago, it was huge.
Now, just before I ask you next question, just to let our esteemed audience know, I'm going to ask another couple of questions of Dave. I'm really enjoying this chat, listening to his insights. If you have a couple of questions, please start putting them into the chat there. If you can appear on screen, we'd love you to do that. If you don't want to do that, that's okay too. Please start thinking up some questions. We've got Dave captive here inside that square box in front of you for another half an hour at least. Maybe he'll network a bit longer. We'll see. But Sarah Varney, no pressure there, Dave. Sarah Varney, CMO with Twilio on your show. I thought it was interesting how she said she loves to, because we've been talking about creativity. Let's talk a little bit about KPIs or things that we really need to focus in on. And you asked her what are the things you like to hone in on. She says she narrows it to 3. And in her case, it was actually getting like devs to use it at the top of the funnel, because it's the top of the funnel for their product. It was getting leads. It was getting it was really clear and seemed to make things easier for her, even though they're doing 100 different things. Do you take a similar approach? Do you have like 2, 3, 4 things, for example, in your latest gig that you absolutely double down on?
Yeah, I think it starts. I think what I have learned now, and I don't have nearly as much experience as Sarah, which is like the cool part about doing that podcast. But I think what I've learned now is it's just people only care about the business. They only care about the business impact of those marketing metrics, and so you need to show people the metrics that they can. You need to show them the metric that they need to see in order to know that marketing is working. And working at any company, this is all SaaS, right?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Everybody loves to talk about 15 different things in SaaS. The only thing that matters is recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Period. Right. And so if you can focus marketing on what are the 2 or 3 leading indicators that you have into revenue, because marketing, oftentimes you don't own revenue directly, even in the enterprise. However, there are some leading indicators. So like a leading indicator to revenue could be pipeline, right? So maybe one metric is pipeline. A leading indicator into pipeline could be meetings. Okay. So if meetings are up or down, we have an indication of pipeline, which is up or down, which has an indication of revenue, which is up or down. And then you can even go one step higher, which is like leads or MQLs or whatever you call them. Those are typically the 2 or 3 things. And you might also show like traffic on top of that if that's relevant to your business.
Okay. So you do approve of, and I think there's a difference between what business needs to see and what you need to focus on absolutely internally. Sometimes they're not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talk about we talk about different things in a marketing team meeting weekly than we do at the executive team level, that we do at the board level. It's different, right? You kind of go from simpler to more of the details internally, and you need to know those things. The marketing team needs to know website traffic, blog traffic, conversion rate, all that stuff. But most of the time at the executive level or sharing out to the company level, they just want to know, is marketing working?
Absolutely. I'm going to bring Stefan Trockel, I think, is coming on screen. Oh, there he is. Hi, Stefan.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Stefan, and hi, Dave. Thanks for your insights so far. One question is, since you've been talking about marketing in general, and now you are in a company where you are marketing within a dedicated ecosystem around Shopify. I think this gives a lot of extra aspects to this. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this, because I think you get maybe some extra tricks to play, some extra things to consider. Your learnings about that would be highly interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to share too many insider tricks in the Shopify ecosystem stuff, because some of that is too good to share. But it's honest. It's not. They're honestly, the real answer is like there's not that many tricks, which is like we treat it a lot like SEO, right? We treat it like it's its own search channel. And so I think a couple things that I would say that I wish I knew maybe a year ago would be like, number one would be make sure you can track everything first, like have the whole funnel implemented, because you can get that analytics and attribution from from Google Analytics and Shopify. And so the more you can understand that channel, it's so much like SEO. Like, I don't want to explain this advice. It's so much like SEO in that you can dive down and say, okay, what's driving traffic to our listing? What search terms? What related terms? And then can we build out content? So you can learn, hey, most people are coming to you for this, but you actually do these 2 or 3 other things. Okay, can we build out more content? Can we expand our listing? Can we expand the web of search inside of there? You can also advertise inside of the Shopify App Store now, which is also a good channel. And so I think the more you can be creative and test and figure out ways to like spread the web of traffic inside of the App Store, the better. And a lot of that is great because it goes back to like, what do people want? What content do people want from your website? Like when they're thinking about your business, period. And then, how can you just translate that into the Shopify App Store?
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a million.
Also,
great question.
Go and find 2 or 3 others, like find 2 apps that you think do a good job and just like see, copy what they're doing ruthlessly.
Okay.
All right.
I believe we have, thanks a million, Stefan. Brilliant question. Cheers. We have Jesus Vivas. Jesus Vivas. He's got his website in there. Are you bringing him in there, Radka?
Oh, hi, Dave. Nice to meet you. I would like to know, based on your experience in terms of retention, what is the most common problem in SaaS businesses, and how did you avoid the churn rate in Privy, for example?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say what the specific what the churn reason is overall, because it could be 100 different things for every different business. But I think some of the trends are nice to have versus need to have. Like I think a lot of people, because of how SaaS is everywhere and how easy it is to get a new product and sign up for a new tool or use something, I think a lot of churn happens because people don't ever end up using the thing that they signed up for. Like you have a free trial, let's say you have a trial model or you have a free version of a product, people sign up and they don't know what to do. They don't really use it. I think this is why I love the like product-led growth model for SaaS, which is like get people into the app using the product, really sticky, get, focus on activation. So I think focus on activation is one key piece of the churn. The other thing is really identifying, like getting super clear in your story, in your sales deck, in your sales pitch about the pain and about urgency. A lot of SaaS companies struggle to drive urgency because there's 10,000 tools in SaaS and it's like, I could go get Gong right now, but I also like my friend uses Chorus and there's some other apps and I don't know, we can kind of record calls on Zoom. And so like, I think urgency is another one where, you want to be a SaaS tool and an app that is, you want to be a painkiller, not a vitamin. I think that's probably the ultimate reason that a lot of early stage companies don't get traction or get traction and then lose it all because of churn.
Okay, totally agree. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Jesus. Great question. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So while we're waiting to see if there's any more questions there, Dave, one thing I want to make sure I ask while we still have you is, if you were starting out today, or if you were 1 or 2 years into your career in marketing, with the benefit of successful hindsight, what advice, what are 1 or 2 bits of advice you'd give to anyone at that stage that might come to you and get 5 minutes of mentoring off you?
I would say number 1 is you have to try a bunch of things and you have to suck at a lot of them. And you do enough interviews of like stuff like this where people want to ask for that like magic bullet in marketing, like, and there isn't one.
Sure.
Both from a marketing strategy standpoint and from a personal career growth and development. If you want to, the only reason that I am a CMO now is because I spent the last 5 or 6 years actually doing the work. Like, and that's not to be like, that's not some like pep talk about hustling. It just means that I found the right company at the right stage in my life and career where I could start the blog, start the podcast, start the ads, start the funnel, start an event. And so like in a really short period of time, I got to learn a ton of different things in marketing, not because I read about them, but because I did them. Then go and hire people in those areas that are better than you to replace you. Now I'm standing here in this job only because I've learned through that stuff, like, and just continue to learn. So I think you have to like actually put in the work and be signing up for learning. I think if you really want to grow as a marketer, there's probably 2 paths. I think I love this like structure as a marketer, which is like go learn at a big company. not a huge company, but like, you know, a couple hundred people, go join the marketing team at a super successful company like a HubSpot, like a Drift, learn in that environment like a Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
Then go and take that knowledge, because when you're at a big company, it's very safe. You can't really make a lot of mistakes that are going to ruin the company. Take that knowledge after a couple of years and go to an early stage company and say, holy shit, I have to now do this all myself. But I have this background of my last 4 or 5 years at this company to do it. I think that's a really successful playbook to go after if you want to grow personally.
Now, we've a great answer. I love that. Two great roads to go by, and you can do both, of course, as you did. I have a great question here from SaaS CEO Alex Thuma, and he wants to know, what book are you currently reading?
I'm reading 2 right now. I'm reading. This whole pandemic and the whole situation in the US has me like reading history for the first time. I didn't pay attention in school, so I've been reading like about World War I, World War II, and I just finished a book about President Eisenhower and the 8 years that he was president. And on the side, I'm also reading the Naval Ravikant Almanac, which is a nice little like book of his little smart tweets that make me feel good about myself.
Very good, very good. Of course, war, famine, and pestilence. We're only experiencing a small amount of pestilence compared to what our forefathers, as we go back in time. We've kind of been lucky. We've kind of been lucky in this era, haven't we?
That's very true.
Absolutely, absolutely. In context, we're very lucky. Now, is it true to say that any SaaS company today should be, to some degree, into product-led marketing? Is there a SaaS company? So we have companies that are obviously leaders in that space, but are there any SaaS companies that shouldn't be product-led?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. And talk to us a little bit,
because it could mean different things. Like it can mean different things at different companies.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, here's an example. Like even if you sell a Tesla, I would argue that Tesla is a product-led company.
Sure.
They want to get you in and drive one, or drive your friends and see it, right? And so no matter what you sell in software, there's got to be some version of it that you can offer for free or offer for a trial. Or look, I have been, like the last couple of years, I've studied direct response marketing, and the great thing that the direct response copywriters and advertisers did was they always had this concept of like a lead magnet or bait, right? What bait can we give out that's going to get people to come in? And it might be like, hey, we'll send you a free gift, you know, when you send some piece of junk in the mail in. What SaaS companies have is you can actually deliver on that in a real way and deliver real value. And so if you are Slack, I have a little group. I have a Slack group that I don't pay for. It's like 10. There's 10 people in it. It's amazing. I don't pay $1 for Slack. The companies that I work at pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for Slack. All right. And so like you can appeal to both. I think that we just live in a world where people want to touch and try and feel products before they use them. And so even if you can't give away some part of your product, is there some experience you could create around it? I think one of my favorite examples of this is like before HubSpot had a free model, they always had this thing called Website Grader, where you could go to this Website Grader, plug in your website, and it would tell you all the things that you're doing wrong. That has nothing to do with their product, but it's going to tell me the problems that I need to solve. And guess who has the product to solve that problem, right? That to me is still product-led growth, because you're using some indication of behavior and activity, as opposed to just like, you know, this is Dave. We got his name at an event because I scanned his badge, and like, no kidding, that lead is never going to close because there's no intent there. They didn't ever do anything. It's completely different.
I mean, it all comes down to experience, doesn't it? I mean, right now I'm in 200-euro whiskey vaults underground here in Dublin. And if I was selling you whiskey, I could sit here with the most beautiful bottle of whiskey on earth and tell you this is the best whiskey you've ever tasted, best single malt on earth. But until you drink it, it's very difficult for you to accept that. In your background, you were a customer. You did customer success at a very early stage when that was really just happening? I know because I was part of that, the beginning of that. But do you feel that focus on experience, that focus on optimizing the experience for the customer, so they want to stay with you, or they want to do more with you? Do you feel that impacted your career as a marketeer? Is there a lot to be learned from that?
No, I was terrible at that job.
Okay. I don't believe you.
No, I'm serious. I wasn't terrible at the job. I think where I've gotten that from is just I always think that I'm a person first, and so I like empathy, and so I just think like a great book is Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit by Steven Pressfield, and basically the mentality that I have is nobody wants my marketing, like nobody wants to get my email, nobody wants to see my bald head showing up in a video on like. So if you have that mentality, then you immediately have to think about, okay, if I know that, then what can I do to increase the chances that it might be okay? And so I write like I talk. I'm very authentic. I'm the same person now that, you would see in a video. We lead with customer case studies and testimonials and proof and reviews. And like, you have to know all these things going in and then adjust your marketing strategy. So it comes more from that perspective that like, I just think of myself as a consumer, what stuff do I react to? What stuff do I open? I really study like how people make decisions and what marketing works, and study persuasion and desire and human behavior and all that stuff. More so than working in customer success.
Now, great answer. So, just for the audience, Gabriel Pizzolante, Gabriel is our head of community globally for SaaS Talk, and he just mentioned there that this premium content will be available in the premium content library and SaaS Talk Engage, because obviously, this is a beautiful thing having Dave here with us, but we're producing content here as well. So just so you know where you can find it. Dave, talk to me a little bit more about Privy, about what you've done. And I've kind of asked it before, but I think we got caught in a tangent. Talk to me a little bit about what excites you about that company, and how you think marketing can drive that company, I suppose, to greater heights in the next 2 to 3 years. And try and keep a question or two coming in there. Just keeping my eye on the side there, guys. If there's any questions coming in.
I think the thing that's super exciting, like I love marketing at Privy because it's just such a good fit with the customer base. The customer base is a small, we think of them as small businesses, which is really entrepreneurs. Like I'm an entrepreneur starting an e-commerce brand. I'm just starting, I'm just getting going. And so those people are they're very curious, creative, hardworking entrepreneurs. And the way that those people learn is they go to Google and they go to YouTube and they listen to podcasts. And so like, what's exciting about that is we can help deliver a lot of that helpful content, right? That person is going over to YouTube and typing like how to get more sales on Shopify. And, we can be there with some helpful content. I think it's a really good fit with like the way that we can win as a brand is by being the most helpful, most educational. And so, hey, we got your back, right? We are the experts in marketing. You're not an expert in marketing. You're a founder. You got to do inventory, design, hiring, firing, accounting, like God knows what's happening because of COVID. So come to us, listen to our podcast. We'll teach you how to do marketing. Watch our videos. We'll teach you how to do marketing. Get on our email list. That's the whole like kind of message. That's the whole brand. And that's the thing that's super exciting to me, because I think that's such a fun playbook from a marketing perspective, compared to some other, industries and verticals. And so that's the stuff that keeps me excited.
And how do you balance? Oh, there's a question from Gabriel here. How do you pass the mindset that you've got, your marketing mindset, onto your team? How do you mentor them? So
first is by understanding that I'm weird and not everybody is going to like marketing as much as I do. Number one. Number two, though, is you have to find ways to just always be coaching and educating the team. It's not some like, we sit down on this date and we go through this thing together. I try to like actively coach and use some of these things that I talk about, like the principles or examples or things I've learned in the past as the why behind that. So like, hey, here's how I like to see this landing page done. Here's why, boom, 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 boom. Let's go do it. Right. So now I've set the expectations up front for like how I expect things to go. And then through that process, I'm coaching, and as a team is iterating through it so we can get there. Ultimately, people have to do it themselves. They have to internalize it. But my job is I have to set really clear expectations. And one thing that I have tried to get better at is if your team doesn't know how you think in marketing and what you expect, they're never going to be able to deliver on that. And so like I try to over communicate, like, look, I'm going to be really hands-on and I'm going to micromanage you in this role and this team probably for the first 3 to 6 months until we get this to a point. And if we can get there, then I'm going to be completely hands-off and not in the weeds at all. And so like, I think it's setting expectations that you're, number one is you have to have a philosophy, having regular opportunities to share that and train the team on it. And then number 3 is like setting expectations up front so you can, you know, the team is not like, this guy is crazy. They still say that, but I'm like, I told you that I am crazy first, right? Like you set the expectations up front.
So absolutely. Very good.
I also think one more important thing on this, like, I also think you have to know what you have to, whether you're the CEO or the marketing leader, you have to know what you like and what you don't like. And people don't often like this answer, but I think it's really important, especially in the early days when you could do 100 different things. You have to be able to articulate, like, I want our website to look like this. Okay, that's great. Like that is half of the battle. The reason people just spend so much time on things is because they can't say what they like. And so I want our content strategy to be like this. I want our emails. Great. So let's use those examples and let's have role models as a team. And that already puts us in the right ballpark of like where we need to be from creating. So then I can say to the team, hey, who did you use as inspiration for this landing page? Oh, we use Stripe. Fantastic. Stripe is legit. Like let's keep going. I think role models is really important.
Okay, I can't say how much I agree with that. I'm a little bit like that. When I come into a company, I'm very a little bit opinionated at the start because you got to start, right? You've got to have some sort of an idea. We can talk about testing the market until the cows come home and have
100%.
But you've got to put something out there, right?
And I hate those. I hate those conversations where you're in the stages of like, we just need to get this out there because we need to make it exist and we need to get feedback on it and we need to start to learn so it can get better. And you got 40 people giving you opinions on the logo and the colors and the fonts. I'm like, I'm not asking for feedback on this. I'm telling you what we're doing and we're going to ship it. And look, that has come now with confidence. I could not have said that 5, 6, 7 years ago, but I just think that's important. You have to know what you want and put it out in the world and let the market dictate. No, nobody likes that. Dave, that idea was wrong. And I've been wrong many times, but let's learn through putting it out there, not because we're all going to sit around and all debate about what we think the color of the t-shirt should be.
Now, Privy it's a pretty horizontal play, which would indicate that the TAM or the total addressable market should be pretty huge. And you're obviously very skilled at going after those, small to small, medium-sized customers. Looking into the future, are you going to focus more on becoming ever more effective at addressing that time, or are you going to look to move up market? Where's Privy going to go?
We're going to focus on small businesses in e-commerce, which is huge. Just, I don't know what it is, but Google, Shopify market cap, it's huge. Yeah, so we're really focused on the bottom half of the market, which is like, how do we help small businesses be successful with marketing and figure out marketing? Not, we're a $50 million revenue company. We got 4, 5, 6 different agencies. That's not our sweet spot. Our sweet spot is, hey, you want to grow to $1 million in sales. The way that you're going to do that is by following our stuff at Privy, using our product, and we're going to help get you there.
Now, you're kind of doing 2 gigs, Dave, because you have the DGMG, hopefully I got it right or something close to it. You've got your own gig going, and a big part of that is your podcast. Very good podcast, I must say. And I don't like a lot of tech podcasts, but business of tech podcasts, I do like yours. I do one obviously myself, so I'm opinionated. And you also are doing Privy at the same time. First of all, how do you balance that up? And Second of all, are they mutually beneficial? Does one take for the other?
So the way that I balance it is I block off my calendar, and from 9 to 12 every day I do. No, that's bullshit. And everybody wants me to say that answer. The only reason I'm able to do the DGMG thing and it's taken off to this level is because this is what I'm uniquely good at, which is like, I just am thinking about marketing all the time. And this is who I am. It's really weird. Like, my wife knows it, right? And so all I'm doing is I'm sharing all of that stuff directly with an audience. And I'm going to, after this, I might be walking over to the kitchen and making breakfast, and I have an idea, and I'm going to pull out a voice note on my phone, and I'm going to be like, hey, so I just did this interview with the guys at SaaS Talk. And, one thing that was awesome was, and I'm going to upload that, and that's going to work.
Cool.
And
Please do that.
I will. However, but here the reason that it has grown is not because I have found some time in my day to create it. You do need to keep feeding the content beast, no doubt. But I've spent the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years of putting out content online, on podcasts, on social media, on LinkedIn. And so I knew that DGMG would be successful because I had just spent, like, I already done all the testing on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I was like, man, I just can feel that if there was like more of this content or longer form of it, people would want it, period. And so I launched it. And like, I hate having to explain why it's successful, because that is why it's successful, right? Which is like, you put out the content. This is why I'm so bullish on building an audience. Like, the best thing you can do for a business is build an audience, put out content in the world, learn what works and what people want and what you're uniquely positioned to create, and then just go and give it to them. And so now, like, it's been amazing where I understand what people want, and so I can continue to give them that. But I just kind of like, it just comes out of me, and I just try to share it there. On the Privy side of things, I think it is. I really do believe that it's mutually beneficial. If you think about the park, like, I spent an hour 2 weeks ago talking to the freaking CMO of Twilio and learning about how she does marketing. She has a 250-person marketing team. They did $1 billion in revenue last year. 2 weeks before that, I spent an hour talking to Bill Masitis, who was the former CMO at Slack and Zendesk. And so, like, it's just such a. I wish more people knew this. Actually, maybe not. It is such a hack to host your own podcast and to create your own content. So, like, yes, 100%. It has made me. It's helped me because it's made me a better marketer, and it's made me a better marketing leader.
You just predicted my next question, because I've learned a lot from interviewing founders. I interviewed SaaS founders that same thing. You just get so much from it. I think particularly if you're actually hands-on, and you have been for a number of years. So you have found yourself taking ideas. Some of the ideas. What was one of your guests said that good artists create? I don't fully agree with it, but I understand what you're saying. And great artists copy. Have you found yourself actually taking a few nuggets from the interviews and applying them into Privy?
Oh, 100%. Like the interview with Bill Masitis, we talked a lot about career development, and I reached out to him after, and I was like, hey, can you help me think through? Can you send me like your team kind of org structure that he kind of runs people through? And so, yeah, I've gotten some like very specific advice like that, but I've also gotten like, it's interesting that team owns the website and not that team. That's kind of been a pain point for us. This is one way to solve that problem.
And it's a recurring theme. Again, I know Alex Thuma, the CEO of SaaS Talk, he's got the SaaS Revolution show. It's another great show, but he brings some of that stuff back into the company, and it is a fantastic opportunity to create a brilliant network, but also to get great insights.
Yeah, Dave, it's honestly similar. It's similar to like travel. It's similar to like going to events, and obviously nobody's doing that right now, but like it's similar to the feeling of like you go to SaaS Talk and you meet 4 or 5 other, marketing leaders who are doing what you're doing, and you come back and you're like, oh, I got all these new ideas from people who are doing the same job. It's like, so there's so much value in having a peer group. So if you can do that, make it happen.
That was a great conversation. You're obviously, it's not just that you're on top of your game, it's your passion for it. It's your love of the experience of being a marketer. I think that probably brings you success to you in terms of, focusing in on the experience of the customer. All I can say on behalf of SaaS Talk is thanks a million for a brilliant session.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a fun conversation.